Ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant, great morning to all of you today. It is my pleasure to be invited to speak on today's presentation of your research outputs from your various classes. At the outset, I would like to greet our competent and able campus director, Engineer Ramil A. Sanchez, and also to our plenary speaker, Mr. Mark Lloyd Granaderos Dapar, a highly cited author with 135 citations from Central Mindanao University, to Ms. Michelle Barbon, who facilitated this invitation, as well as the members of the faculty, those who are teachers of research, those who are panelists and advisors of research, and to you, my dear students, for having chosen the Philippine Science High School of Caraga region, which actually is the brightest school in northeastern Mindanao. I will choose to speak to you in terms of some important subjects close to my heart, which I believe will be useful as you polish your paper. Let me speak at this point in time that what you have accomplished is the first stage, where you finish the manuscript. Then after that, the second stage is you disseminate that to a forum like this, and the purpose of which is to make sure that other elements that you have written can be filtered and diagnosed in terms of some infirmities by reactors and panelists who will make sure that after today, you have an opportunity to polish your written work. And of course, the third one is publication. You see, even if you are still in high school, you are not discriminated in the wonderful world of scholarly publishing, because when you publish your work, you will be co-authoring with your advisor. So choose particularly journals that have good track record of responsible and accountable publishing, particularly if these journals are indexed by ProQuest, by Clarivate Analytics, by open access Scopus Elsevier journals, and other journals. The purpose of publication is to make sure that there is another layer of quality assurance, because once you submit your paper, there will be a peer review in which the editor will choose a competent panel of specialists for your chosen subject matter so that the paper can be polished and ready for publication. See? And then at this point in time, I also think of an opportunity that you will be able to disseminate your paper, your results, to the general public. Kumbaga, sa ating mga madlang people. Probably simplify this time, not so much of intellectual and research jargons, but in layman's terms, how would you convey your results to the large base of scientific appreciators of your studies? So let me cite to you in particular the case of St. Michael College of Caraga, that their high school and college students were also able to use the radio station. So they visited a radio station owned by the school and discussed the results of their work so that the general public would know how they can partake of and utilize the research findings. Okay, so I call that from brow to plow, bringing academic studies in schools to the larger mass of our population. After that, I'm sure that in every research that you have prepared, there is a set of recommendations that you're going to put forth. My suggestion, therefore, is for you to create an implementation plan or a strategy for implementation or a strategy for utilization for each of these recommendations, so that after 2 months, 6 months, 1 year, your teacher and your administrators here can do a tracer study of what happened to the recommendations of researchers. And then if need be, if your research has some policy content, then arrange for an audience that you are going to present that to the Sangguniang Panglungsod of Butuan City, where you are going to submit to them your results and articulate them in their session. At the same time, give them your policy briefs, or you can already prepare a prototype of a resolution on ordinance. And then you'll just look for the chairperson for science and technology in this august body who is going to sponsor the resolution. Because, of course, you cannot sponsor a resolution because you are not a legislator. So think of research in terms of having a life of its own. Even long after you have graduated, your research would be able to have its own pathway to excellence. Another that I would like to emphasize at this point in time is uh, I want you to create a YouTube channel in which your presentations today can be uploaded, and you can share that in your timelines. So if every student has 3,000 or 5,000 friends in your FB, and then you are going to put that there. So there will be about 5,000 people who will be able to listen to your presentation. And then if there can be a popularity contest in which the study that has generated the most number of likes, the most number of shares, and the most number of comments, okay, will win for Popular Research Advocacy Award. See? And whatever is the topic of your research, like if you're going to study corals, for example, and you would like people to conserve our corals, then you can create a Facebook page, okay, exclusive for discussion on corals. I had a PhD advisee in the Middle East, and he was working on career change for overseas Filipino workers in the Middle East. So I asked him to create a blog, a public forum in YouTube, no, in Facebook, so that those who have problems transitioning towards career change, or those who have finished the career change opportunity, will be able to enter into a community where there is discussion on a personal and professional level. See, advocacy is a very important part. In fact, one of the jokes that I always give when I handle trainings and lectures on research is this: that the only people who know about your research are one, yourselves, second, your advisor, and of course, the research panel. If by chance, by an accident, all of you, the ones I mentioned, will take a van, and the van will have an accident, and all of you, for examples, will die. Nobody else knows about what you are studying. See, and that is a tragedy of schools today. That research is more of a requirement within the confine of the four walls of the classroom, instead of being an opportunity to nourish the scientific consciousness of our nation, so that you can help build this country as well as be an agent for global development. So, having said that, let me share to you some of the techniques that are in recent years been important in improving research. One of these is a quality assurance thing for your experts. Your research is credible insofar as you have a panel of experts who help you in checking the various aspects of your work. For example, if you are doing a study on mangroves, then you get somebody who is a researcher in mangrove, right? Okay, to help you in the methodology. And then you request this person who is a mangrove expert to write a certification that your study followed the correct methodology for mangrove study. And then, if there is a public policy content for conservation of mangroves, then you can get somebody who is a public policy expert to write a certification that this part is being taken care of. And then, if you can also get a scientific writer, meaning a researcher, a published one at that, who knows what is sound scientific writing, to give you also a certification that he has examined, he has corrected, and you have complied, and therefore the paper is polished, that will be good. Another one, if there is a person who can certify that your manuscript contains no plagiarism and that the grammar is 90 and higher for Grammarly, all right, and that there is a manageable or tolerable uh, content with um, similarity by virtue of tests like key text and Turnitin, then that will be very good. Okay. And if there is also a person who can certify that your procedure followed the ethical research requirement, that will be good. And especially if that person also represents an accredited research ethics committee. This and a lot more. I am particular about also experts in statistics who can take a look at your work. While your teachers and advisors know statistics, they cannot certify that your work is right. There has got to be a third party person, probably with an MS or PhD in statistics, like, for example, Dr. Ivy Corazon Angkog Mangayaay, who graduated from a PhD in statistics degree from the University of the Philippines in Diliman, and who is currently now working at the Bohol Island State University, if you can get her to certify. And don't be afraid about the fees. You can just simply say, I am a scholar. I don't have income. Can you help me? For all you know, there are many out there who are willing to partake with you their intellectual expertise just so you can turn in a high quality work. Dapat nating tulungan ang mga estudyante dahil sila, kayo, ang pag-asa ng ating bayan. All right. Another issue for good scientific research would be on the matter of quality of your references. Because you see, when you submit your paper to an editor, he will read a title. Then after that goes the list of references. And then from there, he would be looking for items like, are there references in which the titles contain colon, a research review, colon, a meta-analysis, colon, a systematic analysis, colon, a literature review? Because a good researcher, his first step when he wants to read is always to check on what have already been done before through the research reviews. So if a research, for example, does not contain research review articles, in the mind of a editor, he has doubts on whether you know the correct technique for doing research. Then another thing that he would be looking at it is, are there continental distribution of your sources? Because I think many of you love American research. America is a great country, the world's best today. Okay, although China is busy catching up, but then America is not the world. So there has got to be some kind of a continental distribution of your references. There must be some that comes from Europe, that comes from Africa, North America, South America, Australia, and of course, here in Asia. Okay, that's it. And I'm sure that some of you are also using hypotheses, right? Now, if you are using your hypothesis, be sure also that you have empirical evidence and previous studies to support your hypothesis so that you can capture that when you try to dialogue your cited authors with your results. And I'm sure many of you, probably if not all of you, are using theoretical framework, right? So let me put in a few ideas about theoretical framework, because most researchers only explain what the theory is. No, actually, there are four layers in the theoretical framework, four layers. The first layer, you simply explain what the theory is. Okay, in the simplest way possible. But of course, you identify who is the author and the year and what is the name of the theory. And then after that, you put in the limitations and weaknesses of that theory. There is no theory without limitations, without weaknesses. And then, what is the purpose? So that in your methodology, you will have to put in something there that could buffer so that the weaknesses of the theory would not be, affecting the results of your study. And the third, empirical evidence from the theory. Okay, when this theory was applied by various scientists in their explorations, okay, what was the result? Oh, is the larger proportion of such studies um, actually attesting that the theory works, or is it the opposite? So that you can capture that when you go into the conclusions of the study. Because one of the important conclusions expected of scientific research is a theoretical validation based on the empirical evidence, the scientific evidence generated in the study. So that is for the theoretical framework. Okay. So when you submit your article to a journal, certainly the first thing that comes to mind is, the title of your study. Now, make sure that the method of your research is embedded in the title of the study. You can go to PubMed, you can go to Nature, you can go to Science, you can go to Clarivate, you can go to Scopus journals, and you will be able to see, therefore, that the method is always embedded in the title of the study. So, for example, an ethnography of, and then what is the situation? The ethnography is a method, all right? Or you have here the focus of the research colon, a mixed methods design. So if you're using mixed methods, it is part of the title of the study. That's how important that is. So regardless of how creatively you write the introduction, the most important things that the editors and the reviewers are looking into your paper would be the following. One, what is actually the actual conditions operating in the environment for which reason the problem evolved? And then from there, if there is such a problem, what have been done already by existing stakeholders in order to abate the problem? And then thirdly, despite such efforts to curb the problem, what remains still to be a threat? For which reason there is a need for a research? And then fourth, based on a synthesis of the available literature, okay, what have already been discovered about the various aspects of this problem? Fifth, from there, what have not yet been discovered? And we call that the research gap. In literature, Venus was born from the foams of the sea. In research, okay, a study is born from the gap in the literature. Because with a gap in the literature, you develop your research focus so that the results of your investigation will be in answer to the gap in scientific knowledge in the literature. That's it. And then I have learned this from Slavin that a study does not begin, a research does not begin with a problem. Hmm? A research begins with a hypothesis. So therefore, there is a need to complete first comprehensively the literature review so that you will be able to form the hypothesis. Because the birthplace of the hypothesis is actually the literature. And from the literature, you have already the backings of previous studies, whether you would like to verify that here or you would like to settle a conflict in the literature, then you derive your hypothesis. Meaning, the DNA of hypothesis is always previous empirical findings. They will be looking for that. And then finally, what is a sense of urgency? Why you should conduct the research? What are the consequential effects? Pernicious society. Okay, if this study will not be conducted, so that when this pushes through, then you will be able to generate information that will stop the problem or at least curb the problem and its negative effects to human societies. That is essentially what they're looking at it. And if I will push forward to the conclusions, when they look at the conclusion part, they will look at your title and then find the answer to that in the first part of the conclusions of the research. That is very, very important that the title is actually answered in the conclusions of the study. And then, mind you, there are two approaches in writing a title. One is that title by scope. So when you submitted your proposed paper, all right, you have a title there already. Then when you finish the paper, the same title is retained. But when you publish the paper, you will have to abandon the title of your study. Why? Because you are going to look at your scientific findings and from there select the most important result in which the scientific community would need to know because that will be an addition to what they already know. Okay, so that is very important. And we call that, for example, as title by result. So, in one experiment of my previous advisee, he had an experiment on 5 methods of teaching. And of course, one that additional becomes the control. And then the 4 new age methodologies. And then it so happened that only the fourth method had a significant effect on the dependent variable. So in the title of his study, he mentioned the fourth method as the best method in order to increase this particular dependent variable. That became the title of the study. Another example, somebody from the northern Philippines published a paper with us. It was about the leadership performance and the factors that predict that. Okay, among SK, Sangguniang Kabataan, it was a 200,000 peso study. When it was submitted to us, there were 23 independent variables or correlates that will shed light on, what really influences the leadership performance. Only one came out significantly, and that was age. So we changed the title, the editorial board changed the title to Age as a Predictor of mm, Leadership Performance of Sangguniang Kabataan of Northern Philippines. Of course, the writer said, why? And she argued that everything was simplified to age, but that is only what she found. Okay. I hope that is made clear to you. It's also very vitally important. And I understand that in your chapter one, there is a section there on scope and limitations where you figure out what are certain things that you want to do that you may not be able to do, and so you put in the limitations of the study. However, there are no more scope and limitations of the study in a published work. No more significance, no more definition of terms. All right, no more acronyms because you see this is already the published version. And so what happens is that the limitations of the study articulated in the introductory part would now be transformed into a critique to your methodology. What is meant by critique to your methodology, and where can we find that? In your results and discussion, the last paragraph there before the conclusion part, meaning the the edge of glory. Okay, the last paragraph there will be your critique to the methodology. What were certain things that you wanted to do, but was constrained to do, was constricted to do, was restricted to do because of certain reasons. For example, a study selected from a population, a particular sampling design that was scientific, and then there would be 350 computed sample size. But then in the actual administration, only 300 were obtained. Now, that is a limitation to the method. And you can put in there that from the original 10 to 50 respondents, only 300 were obtained for various reasons. Okay. It could have been different if the results could have been different if all the 350 original sample size respondents were obtained. That is a limitation. All right, or were there certain procedures that were approved during the proposal, but because of their inavailability or perhaps being expensive, you could not do. You also mentioned that the purpose of the critique to the methodology is to caution the reader as the reader prepares to appreciate your conclusions, so that these conclusions are appreciated in view of certain limitations. And do not be afraid to declare that. The difference between a researcher and a sales agent is this. When a sales agent notices that there is something, something wrong in the product, he will think maybe he will not notice it. And if he will notice it, he will just make a customer complaint and then we can replace. Meanwhile, we already got his money. Okay. However, a scientist, whatever difficult defects or infirmities that he was able to become aware of in his study, which could impinge or hamper the quality of his results, he will tell you ahead of time. And that is called intellectual honesty. So that the reader would no longer puncture him for mistakes because he already accepted that. So when you publish, there are two possible incidents. One is that you declare already what are certain things that are the weaknesses of the method of the study, and then write it there. Or the second incident could be that you are silent about that. And when it will be the peer reviewers and the editors who can catch you for your mistake, that can be a ground for the rejection of your paper. All right? So that's how important it is to declare that. Now, at this point, I would like you to see that you should calibrate from a mentality like, hey, we're only in high school. We are not in college. Or we are not taking a doctorate. Because in research, there should be no downgrading of quality. So I am the consultant of research at St. Michael College of Caraga. Before, the students only had few samples. But then when I came, I said, what really is the population? Then you select a scientific sampling design if there is a hypothesis. Because an empirical study requires a scientific sampling. Because if the sampling is not scientific, then the implication is that the results would lose its generalizability. And the results can only be applicable on the study itself, on the sample respondents themselves. Okay, the results will not be useful to the larger population or similarly situated populations. So you have high school students who have sample size of 250, 300, 400, depending on the correct computation of the sample size. That's how it is. Okay, so here you go. Believe that in research, we are all equal, regardless of the kind of educational attainment that you have. So even if you are in the elementary, high school, college, master's, or PhD, the standards of research should be the same. And we should not adjust the standards because you still belong to the lower echelons. No, there is only one standard of research, and that is the international standards. Okay? All right. So before I end, let me capture my last words for you today, and that is I want you to be aware, cognizant, and appreciative of your strategic role and importance as the country's young scientists. Do your best and excel in research. because that is the justification why you are at the Philippine Science High School. The development of the scientific expertise of the young is a critical predictor of choice of curricular programs that these students like you will be getting in the near future. Yes. And I am very sad to tell you that most high school graduates never go into research programs in college because they go into popular courses like hotel and restaurant management, okay, and then tourism instead of, science. I'm happy that you are here. I am happy that you have chosen the road less traveled. I am happy that you represent the creme de la creme of the young academics of Northeastern Mindanao. It is my sincere hope and prayer that you will succeed here in high school. And then when you publish your work, when you go to college, you will publish the same way. And then after a year, when you are able to search your name in Harvard Hollis Library, you will be able to see your name in it. And that there will be people who will be citing your work. And then you look back at the time and then you said, thank God, I made the right choice. Thank God I had this advisor who really put his intelligence and his expertise to make us do a competent work worthy of international publication. Perhaps for other people, any publication will do, but this is the Philippine Science High School. I believe there is a necessity for the administration to pay, if need be, your publication so that you can be enthroned. Because this is OBEE, outcomes based education. How do you know that you are really making a lot of sense here? When the work of the students win in competitions, get published, get cited, get discussed in Bobo Radio Philippines. That is why it is very nice that the director of your campus will be able to make this memorandum of agreement with radio stations, with the PIA, okay, Philippine Information Agency, that there will be a public discussion about the results of your study, because that is how the public will come to appreciate the value of the Philippine Science High School. Once again, thank you so much, Engineer Ramil A. Sanchez, for the gracious invitation and also for the excellence in your leadership that you're able to steer forward with vigor, with renewed hope, with great competence, this Philippine Science High School here in Caraga region. Thank you and a pleasant morning to all of you.